When anxiety spikes, villains combust, and Tony Stark keeps pretending he has a plan, one podcast dares to ask, what if Iron Man actually said sorry? This is Super Sorry.
Welcome to Super Sorry Takes on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the podcast where we talk superheroes and super apologies.
We're Todd and Amber, creative co-conspirators who love to discuss movies, TV, and media.
What started as the two of us geeking out over TV and movies has turned into our favorite place to dig into the stories we love through the powerful lens of apologies.
We're kicking things off with the MCU because we can't resist a flawed superhero. Their leaps of faith, their disasters, their growth, it can hit a little close to home.
We're looking at how apologies, or the total absence of them, shape superhero stories and what that teaches us about our own choices in the real world.
Each episode this season, we're breaking down one MCU movie to ask who messed up, who grew up, and who should have just said, I'm sorry.
We're digging into the emotional engines under the armor, what powers their courage, what derails them, and what their decisions reveal about who they are beneath the suit.
And since we leave no arc reactor unexamined, consider this your spoiler alert. If you haven't watched Iron Man 3, suit up and dive in.
We're not experts, just fans with feelings. And if we miss something or get it wrong,
we are
super sorry.
Before we dive into the fallout and firestorms, here's our crash course recap of Iron Man 3.
And you know the drill. Massive spoilers ahead. If you haven't watched the movie yet, hit pause and go stream it. If you have seen it but need a quick memory boost, we've linked Marvel's official Iron Man 3 page in the show notes.
Recap mode activated. 6 months after the Battle of New York, Tony Stark is running on no sleep, building Iron Man suits like they're panic buttons and spiraling harder than he wants to admit.
Meanwhile, an ominous terrorist known as the Mandarin keeps hijacking the airwaves with cryptic threats and very real explosions. And in the middle of it all, a scientist from Tony's past, Aldrich Killian, who did not appreciate being brushed off back in the day.
After Tony calls out the Mandarin on live TV, his entire world literally blows up. His house collapses into the ocean, his tech scatters to pieces, and Tony ends up stranded in rural Tennessee with a glitchy suit and a very confused kid for backup.
That's when the truth unravels. The Mandarin is just a decoy. Killian has weaponized extremist soldiers who can superheat and regenerate, and he's been orchestrating everything from the shadows.
With Pepper in danger and the president on the line, Tony is forced to confront the mess he helped create. His ego, his avoidance, and the collateral damage of being Iron Man.
But the real heartbeat of the movie? Tony realizing that the suit isn't the hero. He is. And maybe, just maybe, he doesn't have to run from the parts of himself that terrify him.
And now that we've caught up on all the chaos, let's get into the apology audit.
It's time for the apology audit, where we each pick one fire apology that worked and one misfire, an apology that technically happened but didn't quite stick the landing.
After sorting through every sorry, sort of sorry, and almost sorry in this movie, we've ended up with a small but mighty list of 7 apologies in Iron Man 3. And my fire pick for best apology is probably a little bit of left field, and it's to give Tony a little bit of appreciation for the growth he's showing in the third movie. And it's a small little moment. It's when Tony's in Tennessee. He's on his way to the bar to meet the mother of a character that exploded. He learned about from Harley, the kid that he meets in rural Tennessee. And he's walking into the restaurant as a female is walking out of the restaurant. We later learn that this character is Brandt, who's impersonating a Homeland Security person, but is also part of the AIM henchmen and is able to do the extremist regeneration of her body and whatnot. So Tony accidentally bumps into her, knocking the glove out of her hand. And he actually, to me, shows some growth in this character by saying sorry. Sorry for bumping into you.
Well, that is a very unusual and unexpected choice, because I think there's a very obvious choice for an apology that Tony gives while he is in Tennessee. That is my fire pick for best apology in the film.
Yeah, I'm assuming this is Tony DePepper, if I'm reading the room correctly here.
Tony DePepper. A little bit of context going into this scene is it's coming on the tail end of Tony having this very reckless macho moment when he He verbally attacks the Mandarin on TV, basically says, here's my address, come get me. And then their home is attacked in Malibu. It's completely obliterated. He and Pepper and the character Maya are in total danger. His suit takes off. He is unconscious in the suit, and then he wakes up as it crash lands, and then Jarvis just totally goes kaput.
Yeah, out of batteries, out of juice.
Everything is out of juice. He's stranded, and he finds a phone booth where he calls Pepper via the Stark Industries. A network leaves her a message, and the apology is, Pepper, it's me. I've got a lot of apologies to make. I'm sorry I put you in harm's way. It was selfish and stupid. Also, it's Christmas, and the rabbit's too big. And also, I'm sorry in advance because I can't come home yet. So 3 apologies here. Taking responsibility and ownership. He also acknowledged that he gave her a poor choice of a Christmas present, which, by the way, I thought that was a dog at first. I didn't even realize it was a rabbit. Okay. And then he also gives her an apology in advance because he's not coming home. So like lots of responsibility taking here. He's still adding his Tony flair to it, but he is very sincere. He admits fault, and he's also that he's kind of afraid in the same breath. So like full moment here for Tony to take so much responsibility in the 3rd Iron Man movie.
And yours actually kind of sets up the following scene is a little bit later is when mine actually happens. So at your point, he's showing the growth, apologizing to Pepper. I mean, even in the beginning of the movie, he's already kind of much more apologizing in the mood for that to Pepper, as opposed to previous movies when he's kind of like hiding his palladium poisoning, different things, not really fessing up to what's kind of going on internally. He's kind of mentions to her at the beginning of the film, but he's a hot mess right now, and he hasn't been the same since New York. So he's definitely a lot more verbal with her about what's going on with him. So some growth there too.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to give a shout out to the actress who plays the character Brant that you mentioned, just because she has a fantastic performance. Every single time I see this film, I am just like so impressed. She steals every scene that she is in, and she's not even in the movie very long. And like, I just remember her every single time. All right. Well, I'm going to share my top misfire pick.
Yeah, please.
This is the character Trevor, aka the Mandarin, and he's apologizing in air quotes to Tony and Rhodey. This is when they approach him and are trying to get information about like what is going on. And Trevor just kind of like blurts out this odd apology, even though he doesn't even say he's sorry. He's just basically confronted that like everything he thought was real isn't. And he comes up with this very poor, like, oh, I'd never thought that people had been hurt. They lied to me. I had no idea. In this very flowery, like odd way of speaking that he has. So like, I suppose maybe he's sorry, but he doesn't actually apologize here. And he just kind of is putting up a like, oh, I didn't know. I didn't know I was wrong.
Yeah, I think Tony refers to him, at least at this point in the movie, as Sir Lawrence Oblivier. He's kind of oblivious. But I guess what you're bringing up, though, is he actually dumb or is he playing dumb? Like at this point, you could go either way.
I don't know. Yeah. Sure. He has this line earlier when he's when Tony discovers him. He's just talking to Tony. He's like, oh, it's all the movie magic. And, and Tony even tells him at that point, no, my friend is in the hospital because of this. And so maybe then like he has been thinking from that interaction with Tony up until like when Rhodey shows up to be like, I have to come up with a reason why I did this. I don't know. That's a poor apology if it even is that. So
is he like on media blackout? He's obviously not reading newspapers, not seeing TV. Like there's obviously a lot of things going on in the world with this related to this. So it seems hard to believe he's oblivious.
Well, he's not on a media blackout because he's watching soccer.
That's true too. So it's kind of, it doesn't really back up his not really realizing what's happening because of it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost just an excuse, not an apology.
Yeah. And for my misfire, it's from Tony Stark to Rhodey. Basically kind of a change in how Tony and Rhodey's relationship to the Iron Man suits were in Iron Man 2 to now Iron Man 3. If you remember from Iron Man 2 at the beginning, Rhodey's able to go into Tony's suit and basically kind of steals it from the Malibu party, his birthday party that's going on, flies off with it and kind of quote unquote lets him go. And now in the third movie, at the very end of it, the big climactic battle scene, and Tony has changed, I guess, the biometrics scanner thing in the suits where now Rhodey's not able to actually get into an Iron Man suit to help save the president, save the day. And the line from Tony is, my misfire line is, I'm sorry, they were only coded to me. So that's a change. Iron Man 2, no problem, get in there and fly off from Malibu. But now all of a sudden he's not able to do it. And it makes the whole third act much more difficult when Rhodey has to run around in his plain clothes and a gun trying to save the day and get the president off the high wire act there going on.
You have to wonder why Tony did that. Like, was it something coming out of the Battle of New York and the Avengers that like he thought like no one should be able to steal my suit?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
But then it's also short-sighted when like he needs his buddy, needs Rhodey to be able to get into the suit. So
I mean, obviously that you see in this movie that Pepper is able to get into the suit. But for Rhodey, I guess he has his Iron Patriot suit, so maybe he doesn't think he needs to be able to get into his because he's given his own suit. So maybe that's part of it too.
Well, and they don't seem so partnered up anymore, right?
Yeah,
they're both separate, doing their own thing. So maybe that's part of it. All right, well, let's choose our top fire apology.
Yeah, so this is probably an easy one where yours sets up mine. Mine's more just kind of giving appreciation to Tony, trying to give him his flowers, give him his due of having some growth in this character. So I think I'll bend my knee very quickly here. And yours is definitely a real apology, a real fire apology going on.
I totally agree. This is very clearly the best apology in the movie. It's really nice to see Tony taking responsibility early on in this film.
Yeah.
All right, so our best misfire apology, which do we think is our
You want to repeat
worst
what yours
apology?
are?
Yeah, so mine is Trevor, aka the Mandarin, to Tony and Rhodey. Oh my God, I thought it was all pretend apology.
And mine was Tony to Rhodey, where he says, I'm sorry, they're only coded to me in regards to the Iron Man suit being re-engineered, so Rhodey no longer can get into it and fly the Iron Man suit around.
Yeah, I think here, I'm not sure that Trevor is sorry for the damage that he caused. I don't know that he isn't, but he's really not taking any responsibility. Tony, at least in the moment, recognizes like, hey, shoot, I'm sorry, you can't use this suit.
Yeah, I mean, yours is probably a more true misfire, or mine's more of a misfire by circumstance, that he's kind of regretting his decision of not having Rhodey to be able to get in the suit to help for the final battle, where yours is actually probably more, by the definition to be set up, a real misfire, or mine's more like, oh, I kind of wish I did things differently.
I mean, Trevor really needs to have some self-reflection of his actions.
Yeah, that's a good point too, man.
Like, if he was a little kid, he'd need to go to the corner and think about what he did. So, misfire. All right, we are going to post our top fire and our top misfire apologies online. And as always, we want to know what you think. Up next, apologies that could have been, aka the Super Sorryverse. This is where we imagine the apologies that never happened, but maybe should have. So we've talked through the apologies that did make it into Tony's post-New York spiral, but what about the ones that got buried under trauma, fried in an exploding suit, or conveniently ignored while everyone pretended they were handling it?
Welcome to Apologies That Could Have Been, our little corner we like to call the Super Sorryverse. Imagine an alternate timeline where Tony owns his avoidance, scientists admit their manipulations, and pseudo-villains don't hide behind theatrical accents and questionable hair choices.
Because let's be real, these characters can handle firestorms and fallout, but a clean apology still trips them up. Tony manages a few rare moments of honesty, but they're wrapped in anxiety, deflection, and a whole lot of unfinished business. Meanwhile, Killian builds an empire out of an old grudge, and Maya gets stuck in the moral gray zone. And Pepper, she's out here doing crisis management, emotional labor, and light superhumaning. Basically the only adult in the movie.
This is where we call out the moments absolutely begging for an apology. The ones that could have eased tensions, rebuilt trust, or maybe even stopped Tony from building a new suit every time he had a feeling.
We'll unpack what should have been said, why it matters, and what these missing apologies tell us about conflict in our own non-superpowered, non-fire-breathing lives, assuming AIM doesn't wipe out our hard drive first.
And honestly, with Killian involved, I'm not ruling it out.
Now let's kick things off with our first wished-for apology. I am going to go first this time, and I have an apology that I would have liked to see, and this comes out of some action that takes place towards the beginning of the movie. Happy has been made like head of security of Stark Industries, and he is just all over everybody, miming at people to make sure that they're wearing their badge. He's concerned about HR, which is kind of ridiculous. He's concerned about the janitors. He wants to have robots be the janitorial staff. But he was right to warn Tony about Killian's weird bodyguard.
Yeah.
And he was right to warn Tony about Killian. He didn't like the look of either of them. He was trying to warn Tony, and Tony just totally waves him off. And then it turns out Happy was right, and he gets blown up at the Chinese theater attack, and of course hospitalized. He's hospitalized for the entire film. So I think Tony does owe him an apology. Maybe this happened after the action of Iron Man 3. Somewhere he needs to say, you were right. I totally dismissed you and your warnings, and I'm sorry you got hurt because I didn't listen. To me, that's pretty important because Happy is essentially family to Tony and than Pepper. And so it's like just an emotional beat that should have been on screen, I think.
Yeah, I guess from Tony's perspective, like you mentioned, like Tony's in the hospital with them a few times to try to apologize. So maybe he's wanted to do it if he could, but
we don't see Happy wake up until the end of the movie, and so like it would have been a nice button, maybe something. Anyways, I hope it happened.
And for me, my first kind of need to apologize is Tony to his little kid, his sidekick in Tennessee, Harley, and it's basically kind of I guess a scene or two later, I'm giving him so much credit for how much growth he had, but in this scene, Tony says to Harley about his dad. Harley's going to the whole thing about his dad left to get scratches 6 years ago, and hasn't come back home, and Tony's like really not feeling it, and gives him some colorful language for his rebuttal of like for where he's at in his mental state, the kid. So I think Tony gives a little more sympathy to the Harley character, especially because Tony himself has lost his father, a little bit older, obviously, but no sympathy to Harley when his dad left him and his mom.
You mean when he says, "Don't be a pussy, fathers leave"?
If you want to say it, yes.
Yeah, he doesn't really have much sympathy in that moment, except for like they do have this sort of back and forth and connection, and the kid plays the dad card like that for sympathy later on.
Yeah.
And Tony totally calls him on it. So they have a weird sort of relationship, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah.
Well, I think we have to talk about the apology that didn't happen, but if it had, it would have changed the whole story of this movie, which is when Tony tells Killian back in 1999 on New Year's Eve to meet him on the roof so that Killian can tell him about his work and what he wants to do. And then Tony just totally leaves him on the roof, never goes to meet him. And Killian like spirals into a revenge arc spanning like over a decade.
Yeah.
He even still brings it up in their battle on the Norco oil ship. And he says at one point when they're fighting, "Oh, look, here we are up on the roof." So like clearly he has held a grudge for all this time, and he has it out for Tony and all the people around him.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think I want to kind of change this a little bit to another apology that would have changed things, but maybe this is for Iron Man 1, where Tony in this Iron Man 3 actually meets Ho Jensen in the 1999 kind of flashback scene, and he's trying to introduce him to a heart doctor who's like one of the guest speakers at the event or whatever, and Tony just brushes them both off and kind of just keeps going and partying it up. But luckily, Ho Jensen does not have a grudge from being kind of stood up by Tony and not following through in his actions, because he saves his life in Iron Man 1. So same thing happens to these two characters, but one goes to Iron Man 1 and helps Tony, and one obviously doesn't, becomes the villain. So it can go two different ways, yeah.
I would argue they're a little bit different. He just sort of brushes off Jensen, but he tells Killian to meet him and that he wants to learn about his work. Yeah. So
he's kind of not following through in what he's supposed to be doing, is what I'm implying, which is the same thing. He's not following through and going to the roof. So I think they're more similar than that.
I mean, they are similar, but yeah, it's all a problem.
It's all Tony in 1999.
I mean, and of course the script calls this out. The movie calls it out. Tony says you create your own demons.
Yeah.
Those are the lines in the bookends to the movie. Yeah. That sets up the movie and closes the movie. He talks about how he's created his own demons.
And luckily created a hero for Jensen, who actually saves his life later on.
That's true. He did do that.
What do you have for your next one?
I think that Trevor, and we've sort of already talked about him, but like I would love for him to actually apologize to the public for the fear mongering he has done. Like I cannot imagine what it would have been like to like see all these things on TV or like broadcast interrupted or things like that. He traumatized like millions possibly of people. Yeah. Even though he just thought he was acting, there's a real impact. So like I think he needs to apologize. So I'm very curious to kind of see how all of this will play out with Trevor. He owes many people an apology.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. For me, I kind of want to go back to Tony's time in Tennessee and maybe an apology to Harley's mother. I don't think we ever see, who's off screen the whole time. For one, breaking into her house. He breaks down the door with an axe. And then two, he's giving Harley some sort of like anti-bully weapon device to dissuade bullies from getting them. So it's not a great thing for his mother. I'm sure his mother wouldn't be happy with those two things when she comes home and the door has been broken down. And
wasn't she out working though?
Like, she was working at the diner.
Yeah. I mean, what can you do? She's at work. So.
But I think he needs to apologize for knocking down her door and giving
that part. I
son.
thought you were saying because she like wasn't there. And I'm like, that's not fair.
He needs to apologize for knocking her door down and giving weapons to her underage child.
Okay, that's valid.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what did you think about this moment where Tony, at the very end of the movie, throws his arc reactor heart into the ocean? Didn't you think like that is problematic for the environment? Like he tosses it into the sea like it's biodegradable, but it's like techno trash. Like aren't there problems here?
Interesting you should bring that up, because what I was thinking when I saw him do that was, obviously I think the world knows his whole house gets knocked into the ocean, and they do some cleanup work there and try to get most of the stuff back. But I'm sure there's a lot of interesting devices and things that are probably still at the bottom of the ocean.
Already in the ocean, so it doesn't matter. So
people already know that there's stuff there. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of people doing some scuba diving, doing some snorkeling, looking down to see what they can find underneath where Tony's house was. And that was just another little thing there that somebody might find.
There's going to be
setting it up for later.
There's going to be like a villain that comes from the depths of the ocean with all of Tony's gear.
You mentioned earlier that the giant rabbit, in the front of the house, but also just the whole scene. She comes home from a hard day of work. He's not even waiting for her in the living room where the Iron Man suit is sitting there, waiting for her on the couch, and he pretends that he's in the suit. And then she asks to open the mask, and then she realizes he's not even there. And the big apology though is when she goes downstairs and realizes he's already eating dinner without her, and they basically have a date night. They're supposed to go out to eat, and he's eating without her. I'm like,
I will say though,
he's being really petty because he's mad about Killian and all this other stuff he kind of brings up. It's like, I thought maybe we were going to go out with him instead, and it's kind of pretty weak. Do you have any last apologies?
Aldrich to Maya for weaponizing her work and killing her. Obviously you can't apologize to her after the fact, but I feel like there was something in their 12 years, I think it was, of partnering, or that she was working for him. He basically twisted her genius into a weapon. I'm not sure that was her intention, what they showed at the beginning of the movie. Not that Maya didn't buy into it at some point, because obviously she was still manipulating situations and trying to get Tony there as well. But there's some sort of apology, I think, that could have happened. Maybe that would have stopped some of this action along the way. Do I expect to see it? No, but I want to mention it.
Be nice to happen.
But that's it for my apologies that could have been. These unspoken apologies could have cleared the air, eased the strain, or at least kept Tony from dragging half his emotional baggage into every crisis. So what actually makes an apology work?
A real apology takes presence, honesty, and the courage to stop running from yourself. 3 things Tony keeps bumping up against in Iron Man 3. He's not suddenly enlightened, but he is trying, naming his fear, admitting the fallout, and learning that the man matters more than the machinery.
That's right. This movie shows us that growth doesn't always look cinematic. Sometimes it's just choosing to tell the truth before the fear takes over. Tony's still stumbling, still defensive, but he's inching closer to being accountable in a way he's never quite managed before.
We'll drop our Super Sorry Verse picks online, and we want to hear from you. Which almost apologies do you think could have made a difference?
Up next, Damage Diary, where we tally the destruction and ask the real question. When the world's falling apart, how much wreckage is emotional and how much of it is just Tony Stark trying to outrun himself? All right, welcome to Damage Diary. This is the segment where we tally up the fallout, estimate the repair bills, and try to make sense of the chaos Tony Stark leaves smoldering in his wake. Iron Man 3 isn't just an emotional meltdown, it's a financial one.
First stop, the Malibu mansion. Tony's iconic cliffside home is totally obliterated. A real-world estimate pegged that fictional property at $117 million. And that's before you factor in the cost of removing an entire house from the Pacific Ocean. Structural collapse, cliff destabilization, debris extraction. We're easily talking tens of millions more in cleanup.
And then, at the end of the movie, Tony blows up every single suit he's built, his entire hall of armor. Earlier models alone were valued in the high hundreds of millions each, and fan-sourced estimates put the total value of his 40-plus armors at about $32 billion. That's not just fireworks, that's a small nation's GDP going up in flames.
Meanwhile, AIM's extremis explosions across the country weren't illusions or holograms. They were actual detonations. Government buildings, public spaces, infrastructure, emergency response activation. The national bill for those false flag attacks would easily run into the billions.
And let's not forget Tennessee, where Tony crash lands after his suit hauls him as far as he can go. No swagger, no plan. Just a man falling out of the sky because he finally hit the limits of his tech and himself. We've got damage to local businesses, power infrastructure, and municipal property. reality. It might not hit Malibu numbers, but for a small town, a single crash can be a community-level financial crisis.
Add it all up, and Iron Man 3 leaves behind a damage tab somewhere between astronomical and Tony should have maybe just stopped inventing things when he's stressed.
So what does that translate to?
A staggering $34 to $36 billion in total destruction, all from one anxious genius, one vengeful scientist, and a whole lot of bad decisions.
But beyond the numbers, Damage Diary is about the everyday people caught in the chaos. The ones who didn't ask for extremist soldiers, exploding prototypes, or superhero free-fall landings.
These are the people who'd be posting on Twitter or Facebook, Iron Man saved my life, but also destroyed my shed.
Because for every heroic one-liner, there's someone brushing ash off their car, muttering, "Where do I submit a damages claim for an Iron Man-related incident?"
Let's kick things off. Amber, who's your first bystander?
Okay, before I share my first bystander, I just want to say, really appreciated in this movie how many bystanders got lines and were actually featured in some like really entertaining moments. So of those, the first one I want to mention is on Air Force One, when Iron Patriot comes up there and the character Savin is in the suit.
Yes.
But they don't realize it yet, right? And there's, I think it's an Air Force One like press person and staff, and they're like, oh, here he comes, and they're get ready to like take a picture or ask Iron Patriot to take a picture, and then he just totally shoves them to the side,
and like locks him in the room.
Yeah, just that moment of like pure excitement to like what the hell is going on felt for that bystander.
Yeah, it's definitely a good definition of what innocent bystander is. You're kind of minding your own business, having a good time, and before you know it.
Yeah, Band-Aid gets totally ripped off. What about you?
Oh, mine's for Tony to basically the whole town of Rose Hill, which is the town in Tennessee, the little small town. And that's the bar patrons and everything. When he goes in there and he's trying to talk to the mom of one of the extremist patients that ended up blowing up. The whole battle ensues with him and Brandt. It kind of spills out into the street. And for once, because we do a lot of mentioning of this in other films before, for once he actually tries to draw the gunfire away from the people in the town and not actually involving them. He tries to get him out in the street. He tries to run down the street. He tries to get Brandt to follow him, but she ends up not really doing it. And he runs into the other extremist guy who's there, Savin, and they kind of stops and gets stuck there. But a lot of times we complain about, they always seem like they're drawing all the enemies into where all the people are at and all these MCU movies. First time we actually try to get him away from everybody out. So I want to give him a little props for that for once. Actually, it shows some growth to trying to help the innocent bystanders as opposed to just like bringing them into it.
Yeah, he's learned a lot from the Battle of New York. He's really trying to get people away from danger.
Yeah.
But what about that bystander when Tony crash lands in Tennessee? He causes an accident, a single car accident of this truck that appears to crash into these trees.
Sure does.
I don't see him go look for this person. I am very concerned about this person. Yeah. There's also maybe a deer that was possibly hit either by the car or Tony. I'm not really sure. So concerned for that innocent bystander.
Yeah, I mean, Tony's crashes kind of bounces down the road out into the forest. So he's probably pretty far away from actually where the accident happens, but more concerned of being incognito and not really letting people know he's alive. So he's kind of hiding out, where maybe the better thing would have been to see what kind of damage he did to that innocent bystander.
Yeah, definitely needed to check on that person.
So this is maybe innocent bystander might be kind of a loose term, but this is from Happy to Maya's plant in the 1999 flashback scene. He purposely is like pulling leaves off of this poor plant. Maya tells him not to do it. She doesn't like it, but he goes in there and is like pulls leaves off of the plant. So we can see like the first beginnings of Extremis where the leaves and the branch kind of grow back or whatever. But Happy, what is the deal? You kind of purposely like pulling leaves off this plant. What did it ever do to you?
Yeah, that's a good point. He really did. But of course, that's to set up the action later on so we understand what's going on. Yeah. Yeah, what's that line? A bomb is not a bomb when it's a misfire. So I think we'd be remiss not to mention all those civilians who were impacted outside the Chinese theater, which is now the TCL Chinese Theater when we're recording this episode. But it's also been named the Grauman's Chinese Theater and the Mann's Chinese Theater in the past.
In Hollywood, yeah.
Yeah, in Hollywood. I believe it was called the Grauman's Chinese Theater when the movie was filmed. But Chad Davis's extremis explosion injures and kills bystanders and also puts Happy in a coma cinema. So lots of people impacted when they're just out trying to enjoy Hollywood. So very sad.
When I watch that scene, I think of Happy. He's kind of partially accountable for that because he goes back and kind of showing off. He's got the little secret device that he's taken off of the army extremist guy that he pulls out of the briefcase, and he shows off to the AIM henchmen or whatever, like, oh, look what I got. And all things kind of happen because, Happy's kind of pressing the issue. So all the kind of damage of Happy was a little less of a show off, maybe. Less innocent bystander damage happening.
So there are a couple bystanders. I don't know if they're totally innocent, but there's a couple bystanders at the Miami mansion that I just want to call out.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
First off, there's the security staff when Tony first goes in, and just want to highlight their hilarious stunt work, really like over the top stunt work in a very entertaining way. They're just at their job doing their work day.
They're 9 to 5, yep.
And that's kind of like highlighted by one of the next scenes that we see, who are some of Killian's guards who are guarding Tony. And Tony is just like messing with them, and he keeps on counting down, waiting for his Iron Man suit to show up.
Yeah, from flying from Tennessee. Yeah.
And, one of the guys just looks at the other one, and he's like, how did we get this shift? He was just so frustrated and annoyed. And then, of course, Tony's suit arrives and punches one guy across the face. And then the third instance of this is like Tony is, going through the house, trying to find Killian, trying to find Mandarin. And one of the guards he comes across immediately puts his hands in the air and says, I'm out. I don't want to work here. This place is too weird. So lots of innocent bystanders who actually get some featured moments in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think the line is, honestly, I hate working here. They're so weird. I think you mentioned, too, there's a lot of good kind of featured parts for the henchmen there at that Miami mansion. I believe a lot of them are actually like stunt workers for MCU movies, so they kind of gave them their due a little bit, too, give them some time, which is great. To me, though, that whole scene, that Miami mansion, especially with the henchmen interactions, is definitely the most Shane Black written moments. This is someone that, written the Lethal Weapon movies and the action comedies and the Nice Guys and different things, and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. This felt like he was the director of this movie, because it's definitely things you kind of seen, these little funny moments, within these action movies, things he's kind of known for or whatnot. So there was some of his flavor in this Marvel MCU movie.
So there is one innocent bystander in the movie who doesn't have any lines, but has a very recognizable face, and I'm not sure if you caught it. It is Jenna Ortega, who is the VP's daughter, who is in the wheelchair, who seems to...
Oh, this missing the leg?
Yeah. I did a double take, and I was like, wait a second. So that is who now many people know as Wednesday Addams in the Netflix show, Jenna Ortega, who I guess is pretty impacted when her vice president father is arrested at the end of the movie.
Is it her father or grandfather?
Well, okay.
He's quite a bit older.
I looked this up because I assumed grandfather, but it said father when I looked it up. So I could be totally wrong. That was like one source.
Yeah.
It was one of her first roles ever in a movie. So there you go. Innocent bystander, Jenna Ortega. Also just want to call out our Stanley cameo as a beauty pageant judge in Tennessee. I am not sure this counts as an innocent bystander, but he sure is the world's most enthusiastic bikini judge. It feels like MCU is winking at us aggressively. And that's Damage Diary, demonstrating once again that even when Tony saves the day, somebody's still staring at a collapsed shipping port crane going, awesome. And the reimbursement form is where?
Up next, our biggest takeaway, because Iron Man 3 isn't just about wreckage, it's about the slow, clumsy climb toward owning your choices.
Iron Man takes us from a Tony Stark overwhelmed by the demons he built himself, the fear, the avoidance, the endless suits, to a Tony finally realizing he doesn't have to keep repeating the same patterns, including the pattern that started this whole mess. Brushing off a moment, a person, a responsibility, the way he once brushed off Killian on that rooftop. Our biggest takeaway? You don't need a flawless plan or an arc reactor full of confidence to start healing the damage you've made or the damage you've caused. Sometimes growth looks like admitting, I played a part in this and I can choose better next time. Tony couldn't change New York and he couldn't undo that rooftop snub, but he could stop letting avoidance write the next chapter of his life.
Because being a hero isn't just about fighting villains. It's about recognizing the ways you may have created them. Tony didn't mean to set Killian down a darker path, but ignoring someone's humanity has consequences. Iron Man 3 reminds us that even the mistakes we make years ago don't have to define who we become. Not if you're willing to show up differently today.
And And that's Iron Man 3. The mansion is gone, the armor is gone, and what's left is a Tony who is lighter, clearer, and finally hopeful enough to imagine a future not built out of fear.
We explored the apologies Tony offered, the ones he missed, and the pattern he's starting to rewrite.
But what do you think? Did we get it right? Who owed the biggest apology?
Hit us up on social media and let us know. You'll find our channels in the show notes, or head to supersorry.com and join the Super Sorry Club.
As always, thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show.
On the next episode of Super Sorry, we've got Thor, The Dark World, where reality glitches like a broken GPS, ancient elves crawl out of retirement angry about everything, and London gets front row seats to Asgard's ongoing family feud.
Until then, I'm Amber.
I'm Todd.
And we are Super Sorry. Super Sorry is written and hosted by Amber and Todd. Produced by a Super Sorry LLC. Music by Jam Studio. Special thanks to Looper, MCU Wiki, and Gate World Forum as serving as sources for Damage Diary. Your support helps us keep asking the hard questions and saying the hard apologies. Thanks for tuning in and sharing with friends. And if you're listening from Tennessee or Malibu, we are Super Sorry.
One last thing. Iron Man 3, is it a Christmas movie or not? Similar to the Die Hard original movie, some people think it's a Christmas movie, some people think it's not a Christmas movie. And for me, I can see kind of both sides to the argument. It is set during Christmas. It is a rich character who's learning some life lessons throughout the movie. For me, what puts it over the top is the very end of it, where Tony has all his Iron Man suits blow up with the clean slate protocol for Pepper to show that he's kind of moving beyond that. And she responds, "It'll do." So for me, it's a Christmas movie. It'll do.
Super Sorry is not affiliated with Marvel Entertainment, Marvel Studios, the Walt Disney Company, or Disney+. As of this recording, all Marvel characters mentioned in this podcast are the property of the Walt Disney Company.